This happened a few months ago. I was 35 then, and life felt like a race. After my separation, I moved into that cramped 2-bedroom apartment with my son, Jake. I thought it would be a safe place for us. I thought wrong. The first time I noticed something was off, I was exhausted from work. I came home late one night, tired, and found Jake already asleep. I sat in the quiet, trying to relax, when I heard him talking. It didn't feel right. I heard him having a conversation, but I couldn't catch what he said. It felt too serious for a child. I thought it was just a dream, so I dismissed it. Then there were the nights he started sneaking out. I remember waking up one night around 2. Something felt heavy in the silence. I glanced at Jake's room, and the door was open. My heart raced. I crept down the hallway. Every creak of the floor felt like thunder under my feet. I peeked inside, but he wasn't there. The window was open, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep over me. I ran outside. My heart pounded as I called his name. I hadn't seen him, just empty streets and shadows. But then I heard laughter, children laughing. It sounded distant. My breath caught in my throat. Where was he? I felt like I was losing him. Over the next few nights, things went missing. Jake's toys, his favorite book. When I asked him about it, he just stared at me, those little eyes too serious. I felt panic creeping in. It was like the more I questioned, the less connected to him I felt. One night, I sat on the edge of his bed, trying to understand. Jake suddenly asked, "Why are you stopping me from playing?" His eyes looked different, distant, almost lost. "Who are you talking to, Jake?" I asked, my voice shaky. He stared past me and my stomach dropped. I turned, but there was nothing there, just shadows. I rushed back, feeling a chill. "Jake, come on, tell me." He looked at me, confusion mixed with fear. I could feel my heart racing. It was quiet again, but something felt wrong. He whispered, "They want to play with me." "Who?" I asked, desperate now. But he just smiled, the flicker of fear still hiding in his eyes. Days turned into restless nights. I wanted to know what was happening. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. The cloaked figure Jake had mentioned felt closer, but I couldn't see it. I needed answers, but I was terrified. Then one night, as I sat in the dark with him, I heard it again. Jake's voice, soft and distant. "Where are you?" he asked out loud. Panic surged through me as I felt the air grow cold. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" My voice caught, weighted with fear, but he only stared ahead, wide-eyed as if something was moving behind me. I turned quickly to look. Nothing, just the empty room. But when I looked back at him, he no longer seemed like my son. In that moment, I realized I was not alone. Then, as quickly as it came, he turned back to me. The familiar attachment vanished without a trace. I spent the next few days in a haze. Each morning, I found myself staring at Jake while he ate his breakfast, looking for signs that he was still there. I needed to connect with him, but I felt a barrier growing between us, wide and unyielding. I signed him up for a local soccer league. I thought keeping him busy would help both of us. As we drove to practice that first day, I kept stealing glances at him in the rearview mirror. His face was calm, almost serene, yet I couldn't shake the unease simmering in my gut. The practice was chaotic. Kids were running everywhere, kicking balls and shouting. Jake, however, stood to the side, his eyes scanning the field. He didn't join the other kids. Instead, he began to whisper. I caught bits of his conversation, and my stomach knotted. He was talking about the games and the others. Finally, the coach called for everyone to huddle up. I felt a fleeting moment of relief, thinking maybe this would help him snap out of whatever was afflicting him. But just then, I spotted a woman standing at the edge of the field, watching Jake intently. She wore a long coat that billowed even though there was no wind. Her face was partially hidden, but I felt coldness radiating off her. I squinted, trying to make out her expression, but she turned away just as I tried to focus. My heart raced, and a tense wave of instinct kicked in. I needed to get Jake home, away from whoever that woman was. After the practice, I rushed over to Jake. "Did you see that woman?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He simply shook his head, still staring at the direction she had been. Suddenly, the sun dipped behind the buildings, and shadows began to stretch across the field. It felt unnaturally cold, and I could see my breath in front of me like smoke. "Come on, Jake, let's go," I urged, grabbing his hand. As we walked to the car, I overheard some of the other parents talking. They mentioned strange happenings in the area, talk of missing pets and wandering kids. I felt my heart pound in my chest. Had something darker begun to touch our lives? That night, as I lay in bed, I kept remembering the woman's face. Then the silence slipped in, thick and heavy. I glanced over at Jake's bed, but he wasn't there. My heart dropped. I sprinted into the hallway and saw the bathroom light flickering. I pushed the door open, but Jake wasn't there. Panic crashed over me like a wave. I yelled his name, but the only answer was silence. I rushed through the apartment, checking each room. I finally found him in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, his gaze fixed on the wall. I could feel something had shifted in the air, a thick tension wrapping around us. I knelt beside him. "Jake, what are you doing?" He turned to me, and his eyes flickered as though he were wrestling with something inside. "They want me," he said softly. "They want to play." Then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out entirely, plunging us into darkness. I felt the icy weight of fear settle around us, and before I could respond, I heard a voice whispering from within the shadows. Something wasn't right. "Jake, get up," I pressed, panic overwhelming me. But just as I stood, I felt a cold breeze wash over me, and the whispering grew louder. It was then I realized this night was far from over, and the shadows were just beginning to awaken. I struggled to breathe as I stood in the darkened living room, the whispering lacing through the air like a chilling fog. The voice grew louder, but I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like a chorus of children, giggling just out of reach. I turned to Jake, and he sat there, eyes still fixed on the wall, unblinking. The fear coursing through my veins made it hard to think clearly. "Jake, please," I begged, my voice shaky. "We need to go, now." But he didn't respond. He remained still, head tilted slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. At that moment I felt a shiver creep up my spine, and the room felt smaller. The shadows seemed to pulse, shifting with a life of their own. Suddenly I spotted a shape dart past the window, the silhouette of a child. My heart raced. Had another kid wandered into our yard? I moved toward the window, my breath quickening as I peered outside into the dark. The streetlights flickered on and off, casting erratic pools of light across the pavement. "Jake, who was that?" I called out, my voice rising in urgency. My palms were clammy as fear wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. No reply came from him. Instead, the whispering intensified, and I felt something cold brush against my arm. I flinched, the icy touch forcing me back. That's when I noticed a small object lying on the floor. Something Jake must have dropped earlier. It was a soccer ball, decorated with a pattern of smiling faces. The irony felt jarring when compared to what was happening. Then I heard a faint giggle, a high-pitched sound that sent another wave of dread crashing into me. "Jake!" I shouted again, but it only pulled me deeper into the suffocating fear. With no time to waste, I grabbed the ball and turned back towards him, determined to shake him out of whatever trance he was in. But before I reached him, the air shifted once more. The shadows gathered, forming a figure I couldn't quite make out. My heart sank. "Who are you?" I gasped, realizing I was addressing the darkness itself. It felt like it was waiting, watching. Jake finally turned his head, but there was something different in his eyes. They glimmered with an unsettling light, like a mirror reflecting back at me the fear I had been trying to hide. "Mom, they're ready to play," he said, this time with a tone that sent chills racing down my spine. "Play? Who is ready? I don't want to play." Just as I swallowed back the fear, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the whole room. Jake blinked, and for a moment I hoped he was back with me. But then I realized the figure was gone. The whispering had faded, but the shadows still crept along the edges of the walls like dark tendrils, curling closer and closer. No, this can't be happening, I thought, panic surging again. But I felt a strange pull towards the door. It felt heavier than ever, as if something invisible was urging me to open it. "Jake, stay here," I shouted, but he was already standing, looking at me with wide, unblinking eyes. Just then, a soft knock echoed from the door, as if someone were waiting. My heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that the real game had just begun. I stared at the door, my heart pounding in rhythm with the soft knock. It felt more like a challenge than a simple greeting. The urge to flee coursed through me, but Jake stood frozen, mesmerized. "Jake, please," I pleaded again, my voice barely a whisper now. "We need to get out of here." He didn't move. Instead, he took a step toward the door, unbothered by my fear. I could feel a darkness pooling in the corners of the room, stretching toward us. I had to act fast. "Come back." As I rushed toward him, the knocking came again, louder this time. The sound echoed in my ears, resonating deep in my bones. I reached for Jake's arm, but just as my fingers brushed his skin, the knock turned into a rapid series of thuds. My heart sank further. It felt like whatever was on the other side wanted to break through. "Jake!" I shouted, pulling him back with all my strength, but he stood there, his eyes glazed over. "You have to listen." Then something shifted behind the door. A shadow moved just beyond the thin wood, shifting like a dark curtain ready to fall. My instinct screamed at me that I should not open the door, and yet it felt as if the house itself was urging me to do it. "Mom, let's see," Jake said, his voice almost playful, as if he were inviting me to join in a game of peekaboo. I shuddered. "No, I'm not opening that door." But my resolve wavered. From outside, a voice broke through, soft and sweet, barely audible. "Mommy, let me in." I recognized that voice, and the world shifted in my mind. My heart raced, not in fear, but in shocking recognition. It was the voice of my sister, Rachel. She had gone missing years ago. I hadn't heard it since. "Rachel," I breathed, stepping closer against my better judgment. The door looked harmless, but the memories crashing in were anything but. "Mom, let me play," Jake coaxed, tilting his head in that eerie way again. My confusion swirled, mixing with terror. No, Rachel's gone," I said, shaking my head, trying to break the spell that seemed to wrap itself around my son. "Whatever that is, it's not her." But Jake wouldn't budge. "She's here, Mom. She wants to come in." The knocking grew louder, a frantic rhythm that drowned out everything else. My thoughts began to scatter like leaves in a storm. What if it was really Rachel? What if it wasn't? Just then, the doorknob twisted, as if someone were pushing against it from the other side. My pulse quickened. "Stay back, Jake," I shouted, pulling him toward me. The door creaked, and I knew I had to decide fast. Before I could think, the door swung open with a sudden force. The light from the hallway spilled into the living room, revealing a figure standing there. A familiar silhouette framed in the pale glow. I caught my breath, my heart racing at the sight of her. But as I stepped forward, she vanished. Just like that, she was gone. "What happened?" I gasped, looking at Jake, who showed no sign of reaction. Then the whispers returned, louder than before, with the echoes of giggling children creeping back into the room. I felt something sharp within me, the knife of dread slicing deeper. I knew this was just the beginning. I took a shaky breath, my eyes darting around the room, desperate for answers. It felt like the walls were closing in, pressing me against the floor. "Jake, we need to go," I insisted, trying to pull him away from the doorway. He stood still, his gaze locked onto the space where Rachel had just been. "Mom, did you see her?" he asked, a ghost of a smile on his lips, as if that fleeting moment had been a game. Yes, I saw her, but she's not," my voice faltered. I shook my head. "That wasn't really her, Jake. It's a trick." Suddenly the room felt colder. A chill ran down my spine. Shadows danced across the walls, twisting like ethereal hands reaching for us. I pressed myself against Jake, trying to shield him from whatever was unfolding around us. "Let's just go," I said, urgency rising in my chest. I turned to the hallway, ready to move, but that familiar giggling echoed again. The sound pulled me back to the doorway, and I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if it really was Rachel? "Mommy," the voice called again, sweet and sing-songy. "Play with me." I felt panic swell inside me. "This isn't right," I shouted, straining to break Jake's trance as he continued to gaze at the door. "Jake, please." The familiar giggle turned darker, twisting into a cacophony of laughter that echoed like wind through hollow trees. My heart raced, and an urgency ignited deep within me. I had to protect him. Whatever game this was, it wasn't innocent. "Get away from the door!" I yelled, gripping Jake's shoulders and shaking him gently, hoping to snap him out of it. "We're leaving." Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into shadows. Panic surged through me as I grabbed Jake's hand, tugging him toward the back door. "Out, now!" But he resisted, pulling back slightly. "Mom, wait," he said, eyes wide with confusion. "What if Rachel needs help?" "Help? She's gone, and she might not be who you think she is." My voice came out louder than I meant, filled with fear and desperation. The laughter intensified, filling every corner of the room. I could feel the weight of something dark, something watching us. Without another thought, I dashed for the hallway, dragging Jake with me. As we reached the back door, I glanced back at the living room, where the shadows seemed to swirl hungrily. Just before we burst through the door, I caught a glimpse of something darting across the floor, a dark figure scampering behind the couch, too quick for me to identify. "Mom, what was that?" Jake gasped, his small hand trembling in mine. "I don't know, but we have to go." I pulled him through the door and into the night. The cool air felt like a splash of reality, but deep inside me, the terror remained. We made it outside, but that sense of safety was short-lived. The laughter still echoed, haunting the night like a malevolent chorus, and I knew this wasn't over. As we raced toward the yard, I glanced back at the house, and through the broken window, I saw a figure watching us, a pale face with familiar features grinning in the darkness. The chill of dread slithered down my spine as I realized this was only the beginning. I pulled Jake with me away from the house, but it felt like something invisible was chaining us to that place. The laughter pierced the night again, echoing through the trees. I had to focus. I stumbled forward, trying to put as much distance as I could between us and the darkness behind. "Mom, why are we running?" Jake's voice was small, confusion etched into his features. "Because, sweetheart, we need to get somewhere safe," I said, glancing around, scanning the shadows. There were no lights in the neighborhood, just the dim light of the moon slicing through the clouds. The unfamiliar silence felt menacing. We made our way to the towering oak at the edge of our yard. It was a long-forgotten meeting spot for Jake and Rachel. I hadn't intended to come here, but it felt like a place to hide, at least for now. I crouched low, pulling Jake down beside me. "Why don't you tell me what you saw, okay?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though my heart was racing. "I saw Rachel," he whispered, gripping my arm. "She looked just like her. And she wanted to play. Really wanted to." "Jake, that wasn't Rachel. It was something pretending to be her." I fought to keep my voice steady. "You have to believe me." His brows furrowed, confusion washing over his face. "But how can it do that? How can it look like her?" "I don't know," I said, panic creeping back, but we can't trust it, we just can't. A sudden rustle came from the bushes nearby. My breath caught in my throat. "Stay quiet," I whispered, my pulse pounding in my ears. The laughter returned, this time more menacing, and then I saw it. Another figure creeping in the periphery of the moonlight. My heart stopped as I tensed. It looked like a child, thin and pale, with matted hair and wide eyes that glinted in the darkness. It paused and tilted its head, staring directly at us. "Mommy," it called, the voice a twisted mimicry that sent shivers down my spine. It looked like Rachel, but it felt wrong. I clenched Jake's hand tighter, holding him still. "Don't move," I hissed, feeling the weight of dread pressing down on me. "Mom, I'm scared," Jake murmured, eyes wide with fear. "I know, honey, but we have to be brave." I fought the urge to bolt. The figure took a few slow steps forward, a grin spreading wider across its face. Before I could react, it lunged, but instead of coming closer, it stopped abruptly. Its form flickered like a glitch in the air before it vanished entirely, leaving only silence behind. I glanced at Jake, who was shaking. "What was that?" he whispered. "I don't know," I replied, unable to shake the feeling of dread creeping back. "But I think we might need to find somewhere else to go." Just as I started to pull him up, the ground beneath us trembled slightly. "What was that?" Jake asked, fear flooding his voice. "I don't know, but we have to go now," I shouted, adrenaline surging as the ground shook again, sending leaves skittering around us. Then, above the noise of the wind, I heard laughter, a chorus that danced through the air. It was everywhere, and it sounded delighted. I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end. We needed to run. Suddenly, I caught sight of something white moving in the distance, darting among the trees. That familiar face, the grinning visage, flickered just out of reach. "Jake, run!" I screamed, urging him to his feet. It was too late to question anything. All I knew was we had to escape whatever was happening before it closed in on us completely. We sprinted into the darkness, the flickering light of the moon our only guide. Jake's small hand was clammy in mine, but he didn't complain. He was focused, driven by fear, just like me. The only sounds were our hurried breaths and the crunch of leaves beneath our feet. We ducked under low branches weaving through the trees. I dared a quick glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see something or someone chasing us. But there was only darkness, and the laughter echoed faintly, weaving through the branches like a ghost. "Where are we going?" Jake panted, his voice shaky. "Just away," I replied, trying to keep my own panic at bay. "We need to find some place safe." We ran until my lungs burned, until the trees began to thin, leading us toward what seemed to be an old play structure, a forgotten relic in the fading playground. It looked empty, neglected, but I felt drawn to it. Maybe it was just the hope that someone had been here before us. "Mom, can we stop?" Jake gasped, pulling on my hand. "I can't run anymore." I hesitated, glancing back again. The shadows felt closer now, creeping like a live thing. "Just for a minute," I said, quickly leading him to the dilapidated structure. We crouched beneath a rusted slide, the metal cold against my palms. I pushed aside the rising fear that chased us. "Listen, Jake," I whispered urgently, "you have to stay close. If anything comes near, we don't engage. We run." "Okay, Mom." His small voice was barely a whisper, but there was something in his eyes, an understanding that made me feel sick. He was too young to face this. The air felt thick with tension as we caught our breath. I tried to steady myself, my heart still racing when I thought I heard something. A soft thud, like footsteps, approaching. I strained my ears, but the laughter had quieted, leaving the night eerily still. Then I noticed it, a glint of white peeking from behind a tree. My stomach dropped. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Jake, stay here, don't move," I ordered, my voice trembling despite my attempt to be firm. What if it was still around? What if that thing had followed us? I slowly crept forward, inching around the edge of the play structure to get a better look. The white figure vanished again when I turned, elusive like smoke. I squinted into the darkness, heart racing. I took a breath and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a soft, familiar laugh floated on the wind. My heart sank, torn between dread and a flicker of hope. "Rachel," I whispered. There was no answer, just the shadows dancing, taunting me. I turned back to where Jake was supposed to be, but my breath caught in my throat. He was gone. "Jake," I shouted, panic rising like bile in my throat. "Jake." I raced back toward the slide, and then I saw it. There was a small pile of something white, at the base of the structure. My pulse quickened as I reached down. It was one of Jake's worn stuffed animals, his favorite. That's when I heard it again. The laughter. This time closer, colder. A voice that was impossibly sweet and deceptively innocent. "Mommy, come play." I took a step back, panic flooding my senses. That voice wasn't my son's. Then the ground shook again and branches snapped overhead. I had to find him. With darkness closing in, I felt the truth settle in. Whatever was out there wasn't just looking to frighten us. It wanted more. I turned away from the slide, my heart racing as I searched the trees. "Jake!" I screamed, my voice echoing in the stillness. I scanned the shadows, desperate for any sign of him. Every second felt like an eternity. The laughter echoed again, swirling around me like a chill wind. "Where are you, buddy?" I whispered, my voice cracking. I found myself moving toward the sound, drawn in against my better judgment. I crouched low, hiding behind the play structure. The darkness around me felt thick, almost suffocating. My mind raced through possibilities. What if he was hurt, or worse? "Jake," I croaked again, my throat dry. I didn't hear anything but that damned laughter, a quick burst that chilled me to my core. In the small clearing, shadows shifted like they were alive, dancing just beyond reach. Suddenly a figure darted between the trees. It was small, quick. I stood up, peering through the branches. "Jake," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart leaped with hope as the movement stopped, the figure half hidden behind a trunk. "Mommy," came a voice that sounded eerily close to Jake's. I squinted, trying to make out the face in the dark. "Jake." I rushed forward, my hands reaching out, but when I got close, the figure just giggled and vanished into the woods. "No, no, no!" I cried, my mind racing in panic. This couldn't be happening. I stumbled forward, following the sound of the laughter, trying to silence the fear building inside me. The trees loomed like sentinels, twisting my way. "Stay away from him!" I shouted, frustration boiling over as I pushed through the brush. I burst into another small clearing, the moonlight illuminating a long-forgotten tire swing swaying gently in the wind. It was quiet here, too quiet. No laughter, no Jake. I dropped to my knees, my hands pressing against the cool earth. I had to think, where else could he be? I wanted to scream, but I held it back. I couldn't let whatever was out here sense my weakness. And then I saw it, a single boot print in the mud, smaller than mine. I knelt down, tracing the outline with my fingers. My breath hitched. He had been this way. "Jake," I called again, louder this time, fueled by determination. "Please." In response, I heard a rustling behind me. I turned, adrenaline pumping, heart hammering. But it was only a raccoon, scurrying off into the underbrush. I let out a shaky breath, my fear morphing into resolve. I pushed back to my feet, more determined than ever. I would find him. There had to be a way. But then, as I turned to head deeper into the woods, something caught my eye. There, just beyond the clearing, was a flash of white. The same white I had seen before, the same glimmer that had vanished so quickly. I squinted again and took a step forward. That's when I noticed the silhouette standing between the trees. It was small and still, but something felt off. My gut twisted as I called out, "Is that you, Jake?" Silence. I took another step and the figure shifted slightly. A chill ran down my spine. I wanted to turn and run, but I had to know. "Please, if that's you, say something." The figure looked up, and my heart dropped as a sweet, innocent smile spread across its face. "Mommy, come play," it said, its voice echoing with a mocking tone. A scream clawed at my throat as the figure darted away, laughter trailing behind it like smoke. I was frozen, rooted to the spot, realization washing over me. This wasn't my son, and whatever it wasn't done playing. I didn't know how long I stood there shaking, lost in disbelief. The echo of that laughter haunted me, twisting in my mind like a serpent. This thing had tricked me. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. I couldn't let it shake me like this. Jake needed me. I forced myself to move, stepping into the darkness where the figure had disappeared. My eyes darted from tree to tree, every shadow a potential threat. I called Jake's name again, louder this time, but all I received in return was the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Taking careful steps forward, I remembered the stories of shadow creatures preying on children in the night. They lived in the in-between places, where light couldn't reach. Fear crept over me like a wet blanket. I refused to entertain the darkest thoughts clawing at the edges of my mind. Then I spotted the tire swing again, swaying gently in the breeze like it was still occupied. I approached it cautiously. "Jake!" I shouted again, my voice breaking. Silence answered, chilling and absolute. As I turned away, something flickered in my peripheral vision. I glanced back, that flash of white again, darting between the trees. My heart raced anew, pulling me into motion. "I'm coming for you!" I shouted, channeling every ounce of strength I had. I plunged deeper into the woods, following the erratic movements. The laughter returned, louder now, teasing me. "Come play, Mommy," it chirped, the words twisted into something unnaturally sweet. Suddenly I entered another clearing. My breath caught. The ground here was soft and softening under the weight of heavy rain. Jagged branches reached outward like skeletal fingers. I scanned the area warily, but the only thing waiting for me was darkness and disquiet. Just ahead, glinting in the moonlight, I spotted something white lying on the ground. I moved toward it, unsure of my next step. It was a small toy, a little dinosaur Jake loved. I picked it up, my heart sinking as I cradled it in my trembling hands. "Jake!" I screamed again, panic igniting with every second. This was a message, a sick game. The laughter returned, higher and shriller, echoing off the trees. My pulse raced. "Stop it! Where are you?" I shouted at the shadows, my voice rough with desperation. I spun around, the feeling of being watched prickling at my skin. Then I saw it, a pair of glowing eyes peering at me from behind a tangled bush. They were bright and unyielding, locking onto mine. I took a cautious step closer. "Jake?" I whispered, though deep inside I knew it was that same sweet, mocking voice that answered. "Come find me." It darted to the side and disappeared, heart-pounding laughter trailing off. I took a step back, choking on my fear. This thing, whatever it was leading me away from Jake. I couldn't chase it anymore. I had to regroup. Just as I turned, a flash of movement caught my eye again. This time it wasn't just a figure. It was standing close enough that I could see a shadowy outline, but it seemed larger. And then I saw it. A distorted version of my son, twisted and wrong. "Mommy, come play forever!" It sang and my stomach dropped. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for air. My heart thudded violently in my chest, as though trying to escape the confines of my ribcage. I blinked rapidly, disoriented in a familiar yet unsettling place. The inside of my own home. My living room was drenched in the pale glow of the moon streaming through the window, illuminating the chaos that had unfolded. I rushed to my feet, trembling. "Jake!" I called out, panic cutting through the remnants of fear that still lingered in my mind. But the apartment was silent. Bounding from room to room, I frantically searched, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. The shadows seemed to stretch and curl around me, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. I needed to find him. "Jake!" I shouted again, my voice quaking with urgency. An odd sense of calm mixed with fear twisted my stomach as I recalled the last moments before everything turned black. The shadow of my son, no, the darkness that wore his guise, had overwhelmed me in that clearing, but it hadn't taken him away. As that thought solidified, I made my way to his room, my breath hitching. I opened the door, and relief washed over me as I spotted him curled up in his bed, the peaceful rise and fall of his small chest, a testament against the horrors of the night. It was real. We were safe. Kneeling beside him, I brushed a hand against his hair, letting the warmth of reality seep into my skin. But beneath that warmth, unease continued to cling. "Jake, sweetie, wake up," I said, soft yet firm. His eyelids fluttered open, the sleepiness lingering in his gaze. "Mom," he murmured, confusion clouding his eyes. "Where were you? The others were waiting." The words sent icy tendrils creeping up my spine. "Others?" My voice caught, dread winding deeper. "What do you mean, the others? You were just gone." A smile tugged at his lips, innocent and unsettling all at once. "We were playing hide and seek," he replied dreamily, completely unfazed. My heart raced as I searched his expression for signs. He looked like Jake, but the uncertainty gnawed at me. "You, of course you were. But I need you to listen to me, okay? The games are over. We have to stay together." He blinked slowly, his eyes losing that distant glow I had seen earlier. "Okay." But then a shadow passed over his face. The momentary sweetness faltered. "But they want to play again." Shivers cascaded down my spine, and I stood abruptly, trying to keep my composure as the sense of danger brushed against the edges of reality. I remembered the laughter, the darkness whispering promises I instinctively knew were wrong. "We'll talk about it later," I insisted, grabbing his hand and leading him back into the living room. "We need to go, now." I fumbled with my phone but found it dead. My thoughts raced, desperate. What now? I'd have to take him away from this place where the lines between light and dark twisted together. Somehow, we had to escape. As we stepped outside, the night air was sharp against my skin, an urgent reminder of how fragile our safety felt. The street was quiet, and my heart pounded as I urged him forward, away from the house and into the open. We made our way toward the nearest gas station, the dim lights barely piercing the darkness around us. "Mom, what if they come back?" Jake asked, his voice small, shadows flickering in the corners of my mind, taunting. I glanced down at him, forcing a smile despite the uncertainty clawing at my chest. "I'll protect you. We'll figure this out." The hairs on my arms stood on end, the oppressive weight of unease lingering like an unwelcome ghost. As we reached the station, the flickering neon sign felt almost mocking. I pushed open the door, and the jangle of bells echoed, but inside, the warmth felt hollow. A lone cashier glanced up, eyebrows furrowed. Their weariness noted our illuminated faces carved with worry. I approached, desperation rising with every breath. "I need to use your phone," I said, urgency spilling out. He nodded, silently offering the landline, his expression revealing a reluctant understanding. I dialed for help, choking on every uncertainty as I waited for the operator to respond. "Please hurry," I whispered before hanging up. But as I stood waiting, the air shifted again. A cold breeze brushed past, laughter trickling in from outside. Looking back toward Jake, I saw his eyes widen in confusion. They're here again. In that moment, dread pooled thick in my stomach as I realized we hadn't escaped at all. I turned to the windows, where a flicker of movement caught my eye, a childlike figure darting behind the glow of streetlights, grinning with that mocking smile. Though our immediate threat was leaving, I knew they weren't truly gone. I was left with a lingering truth. The darkness had merely shifted, biding its time, always waiting for a moment of softness, an opening to play once more. Jake looked up at me, and for a brief moment, I saw both innocence and chill in his eyes. I had saved him tonight, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever haunted us was still lurking just beyond reach. I took a deep breath, holding him close, because I knew that this story wasn't truly over.